The sun had not yet crested the eastern ridge when the first rooster of Rancho Esperanza misfired a crow and fell silent, as if embarrassed by its own voice. In that hush, a shadow the size of a cottonwood slid across the corral fence. Maria Inés, 6'9" in her bare feet, shoulders broad enough to block the moon, leaned over the top rail and stared at the lone figure inside. No he tenido sexo en 6 meses, she said, voice low, almost shy, the words slipping out like a confession she hadn't meant to make aloud. The ranchero virgen, Tomás Ortega, 29, sunburned, and still clutching the mane of a half-wild mare, froze. The horse sensed his shock and bolted, leaving him ankle-deep in dust and silence. Maria Inés had arrived at the ranch 3 days earlier, answering an ad for strong hands, no questions. The foreman had taken one look at her, towering, gentle-eyed, callous as thick as saddle leather, and hired her on the spot. No one asked why a woman built like a cathedral needed work on a failing cattle spread in South Texas. They simply handed her a pitchfork and pointed toward the hay barn. Tomás had avoided her. Not because of her size, they'd grown up around big men, but because every time she laughed, the sound rattled something loose inside his chest. 6 months without sex was his own private drought, a statistic they never voiced until her blunt admission cracked the air between them. He wiped sweat from his brow. Ma'am, that's none of my business. Maria, she corrected. And it is now. She vaulted the fence in one fluid motion, landing beside him with the grace of someone who they spend a lifetime compensating for gravity. Up close, her eyes were the color of river stone after rain. I didn't mean to embarrass you, she said. Just stating a fact. Like saying the creeks low or the coyotes are bold this year. Tomás swallowed. 6 months is a long time. For some. She shrugged, and the motion lifted the hem of her chambray shirt, revealing a scar that curved beneath her ribs like a pale crescent moon. For me, it's been longer. Try never. The words hung there, heavier than the heat. Tomás felt the ground tilt. He had assumed, everyone assumed, that a woman like Maria Inés, with her easy strength and quiet humor, would have stories stacked like cordwood. Lovers in every port. Instead, she offered him the same barren ledger he carried. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Why tell me? Because you flinch every time I walk past the bunkhouse, she said. Like I'm a storm about to break. I'm tired of being the storm. Tomás looked at the mare now nosing the far fence, then at the woman beside him. The ranch had been dying for years, drought, death, his father's slow surrender to cancer. Tomás had stayed to hold the pieces together with baling wire and stubbornness. Virginity wasn't a virtue he'd chosen, it was the residue of a life spent patching roofs instead of chasing girls at the county fair. Maria Inés extended a hand the size of a dinner plate. Help me with the north pasture gate? It's off its hinge again. He took her hand. Her palm was warm, rough, steady. Together they walked the length of the corral, the silence between them shifting from awkward to companionable, like two instruments finding the same key. That was the first unexpected turn, the giant sister and the virgin rancher became a team. By noon the next day, word had spread. The hands, mostly older men with sun-lathered faces and fewer teeth than opinions, watched Maria Inés wrestle a bulky post-hole digger into submission while Tomás measured wire. She sang as she worked, old corridos her mother had taught her, voice rolling across the mesquite like thunder over water. The men pretended not to listen, but their shovels kept time. Tomás discovered she could lift a calf that had tangled in barbed wire without straining, could read the sky for rain better than the weather app, could mend a saddle with dental floss and prayer. He discovered, though, as she cried at night, not loud, just a hitch in her breathing that carried through the thin walls of the bunkhouse. One evening, after a windstorm snapped the windmill, he found her sitting on the tank's edge, boots dangling, staring at the broken sails. My brother used to fix these, she said without turning. Before the accident. Tomás sat beside her. The tank was half full, water black and star-flecked. What happened? Grain elevator. He was 22. He was 15. After that, Mama said I had to be the strong one. So I grew into it. She flexed her fingers, studying the knuckles. People see the size and think that's all there is. But strength without somewhere to put it down, it's just weight. Tomás thought of his own father, wasting away in the back bedroom, too proud to ask for help carrying the oxygen tank. He thought of the foreclosure notice folded in his pocket. I know about wait, he said. They sat until the stars burned holes in the dark. Somewhere in that quiet, the second unexpected turn arrived. Maria Inés asked Tomás to teach her to dance. Not for romance, she clarified, cheeks flushing the color of prickly pear fruit. For my cousin's wedding. If I don't learn a basic two-step, ella spend the night holding up the wall. And walls don't need holding. Tomás laughed, the first real laugh in months. He cleared the tack room, pushed saddles aside, and plugged his father's ancient radio into the outlet. The signal crackled, but George Strait came through clear enough. He took her hands. She was taller by 4 inches, so he stood on a feed bucket. They stumbled, counted aloud, apologized for crushed toes. By the third song, they moved together like they'd been doing it for years. Her laughter shook dust from the rafters. Word of the dancing lesson spread faster than the dancing itself. The hands peeked through knotholes. Old Miguel brought his guitar. Someone produced a bottle of mezcal. The tack room became a Saturday night tradition. Meanwhile, the ranch began to breathe again. Maria Inés organized the hands into crews, one to repair fences, one to dig a new well, one to plant winter rye in the fallow south field. Tomás handled the books, negotiated with the bank, applied for drought relief they'd been too proud to touch. The third turn came on a Tuesday in late October. The vet arrived to pregnancy check the cows and found half the herd carrying twins, unheard of after years of poor forage. The bank called with an extension. And Tomás' father, propped up in bed, asked to be wheeled out to the porch to watch Maria Inés gentle a colt no one else could touch. Sis got hands like my Rosa, the old man rasped. Tomás' mother had died when he was 7. Don't let her leave, mijo. Tomás didn't answer. He was too busy realizing he'd fallen in love with the sound of her voice calling the dogs at dusk. The emotional climax arrived the night of the wedding. The cousin's reception was held in the VFW hall in Uvalde, fairy lights strung like cheap constellations. Maria Inés wore a simple blue dress that strained at the seams but made her as luminous. Tomás had borrowed a sports jacket from Miguel. It was tied across the shoulders, but he didn't take care. They danced. First the two-step, then a waltz, then a cumbia that had the floor shaking. When the band slowed for Amarillo by morning, Tomás led her outside to the gravel lot where the air smelled of barbecue smoke and cooling asphalt. I need to tell you something, he said. She waited, hands clasped in front of her like a schoolgirl. I'm not a virgin because I'm holy, he began. I'm a virgin because I was waiting for someone who wouldn't laugh at the parts of me that are small. My Spanish is rusty. I cry at commercials with dogs. I'm terrified the ranch will die with me. But you, his voice cracked. You make me feel like the land might forgive me for staying. Maria Inés studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver medallion engraved with San Isidro, patron of farmers. My brother wore this, she said. They want you to have it. Not because you need luck, but because you give it. Tomás turned the medallion over. On the back, someone had scratched, para la que lleva el mundo. For the one who carries the world. He looked up. Maria Inés, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a telenovela. Then don't, she said, and kissed him. It was not their first kiss. There had been a tentative one after the windmill repair, another after the colt was saddled, but it was the first that tasted like tomorrow. When they pulled apart, the music inside had shifted to something slow in Spanish. Inside, the dance floor parted. The hands, Miguel, Jesus, even cranky old Pancho, formed a circle. Someone had taught them the steps. Maria Inés and Tomás stepped into the center. The giant sister and the ranchero virgin spun beneath the flickering lights, her dress flaring like a bluebonnet in wind, his boots finding the rhythm his heart had known all along. Later, driving home in Tomás' battered pickup, Maria Inés rolled down the window and let the night rush in. 6 months, she said, smiling at the stars. Feels like a lifetime ago. Tomás reached across the seat and took her hand. We've got water in the tanks, rye in the ground, and a colt that follows you like a dog. 6 months is just the prologue. At the ranch, the hands had left the porch light on. Inside, Tomás' father slept with the oxygen humming steady. The dogs thumped tails against the floorboards. Maria Inés paused on the threshold. I used to think strength meant never asking for help, she said. Turns out it means knowing who to ask. Tomás hung his head on the peg by the door. And virginity? Maybe it's just space. A space for the right story to grow. They stood there a moment, two people who had carried separate routes across desert and grief, now standing in the same doorway with the same rain-scented wind at their backs. Outside, the repaired windmill turned, singing its creaky lullaby to the stars. Inside, the ranch exhaled, a long, slow breath of forgiveness and beginning. And somewhere between the turning sails and the sleeping dogs, the giant sister and the ranchero virgin stepped over the threshold together, not as storm or shelter, but as home.